Hello, my name is Diane, and today I'm going to do my November reading wrap up. I read 2 books in November, which doesn't sound like a lot, but compared to how much I have been reading, I'm very happy with that. I only read 1 book in August, 1 book in September, and I didn't finish any books in October. So I'm pretty happy with having finished 2 books in November. I also have a book that I DNF'd that I'll talk about. But overall, it was a pretty okay reading month quality-wise. I didn't love either of the books I finished, but I did enjoy them both. And either way, I'm glad to finally have books that I'm finishing now that I'm more excited about the books that I have planned to read. So without further ado, let's talk about what I read. The first book that I DNF'd was Puzzleheart by Jen Reese. This is a middle grade story about a child who their father is estranged from his mother, and they go as a family to stay with this grandmother in this mysterious puzzle house that our main character has always wanted to explore and try and figure out all the secrets inside of this house, but has never really gotten the opportunity to because of the relationship between their father and grandmother. I think the idea of the story is really cool, but I mean, I'm not in the middle grade age range. I am not the demographic for this story, and I just felt like sometimes a middle grade story does work for me, and I do enjoy reading from that character's perspective and whatever's going on. I just didn't really connect with this character's perspective. They read to me a lot younger than they were meant to be, and that might just be me not being as familiar with middle grade perspectives, but I just didn't feel super engaged in what was going on. So that doesn't mean this is a bad book at all. I'm just not the audience for this at all. I do still like the concept of this, though. I think it's very interesting to have this mysterious house with all of these secrets in it, and then having a young character get to explore that. So might be worth checking out for someone else, but this one just wasn't for me. The first book that I actually finished was Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen. This is a young adult fantasy, and we follow Violet, who is a seer. She can see the future. She's pretty young, though, and she's not really trained, so she's not especially good at it. She's not very talented as far as seers go, but seers are so few in this world that they're typically employed by the royal family, and usually once they have a position there, they can easily keep it because they would be very difficult to replace. And in Violet's kingdom, there has been a prophecy by the previous seer that something terrible is going to happen to the kingdom, and only the future bride of the prince has the potential to stop it and save them. This prince, however, is not really interested in getting married unless he finds his true love, but he's not making much of an effort to look for her, which is very infuriating to both Violet and the king, who have a pretty good relationship with one another. I liked this story. I really didn't love it. I don't think it's gonna be a very memorable story for me, which is fine because this was meant to be a duology, and the author has said she's not planning to write the sequel to it, so it doesn't really need to be memorable for me, I guess, because I'll never know what happens next. But I found it very readable. I don't think the writing was bad at all. It was enjoyable for what it was, but it wasn't a story that I think I'll ever end up loving or thinking about going forward. The relationship between Violet and the prince is very strained. It's meant to be that they used to get along, and now for some reason they hate each other. I still don't really understand why they hate each other so much, other than the king likes Violet more than he likes the prince. They're also just super juvenile in the way they behave with one another in public, which felt very strange for two people who are clearly very well trained in keeping their composure and keeping up appearances for the sake of the kingdom. Just felt very strange that they just have these very juvenile outbursts at one another when they're speaking publicly in front of everyone. Very strange, very silly. There are a bunch of nods to other fairy tales throughout this story, although I wouldn't say this is a retelling of any particular fairy tale. There are just little like Easter eggs of familiar fairy tales throughout. And I did think having this seer character as our main character and having her have this ability but not be super great at it, where she can't just predict what's going to happen. She doesn't always know the full extent of everything going on, even though once things start happening and this curse is apparently approaching, she starts having glimpses and very strange experiences that kind of lead the story forward. So there were definitely things in this that I enjoyed. I finished reading it, so that's usually a good sign. I'm pretty quick to DNF things these days if I'm not really enjoying them. So I think this was enjoyable, but not anything that I'm going to be putting on my favorites list at the end of the year. And the other book that I finished in November is The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. This is, I don't know if the series is going to be continuing. I know there are 2 books within this world, and I am planning on reading the second one. I liked this story. I don't think I liked it as much as I had expected to, but I definitely did enjoy it. The story takes place in a zombie universe. It's our world, but there are zombies, but it's a very strange take on zombies. There is a unique twist once they uncover and explain the virus that is causing this, and just the way things progress. They're not your typical mindless, crazed zombies looking for flesh. Some of them are, but I don't know. There's a lot more variation within this particular story, this particular version of zombies, which they call hungries in this story. And we start by following this young girl who is in a school. It's like an army-run facility, and all the children are kept in separate rooms, and they're strapped into wheelchairs before they are brought into their classrooms. It's very bizarre opening to the story as far as what's going on, and it's very quickly revealed that the children within the school are hungries. They're just, for some reason, have maintained most of their humanity, but they also can't be trusted to just be walking around the adults who are not hungries. We also get the perspectives of 4 of these adults. 2 of them are military guys who work at this facility. One of them is a teacher who has some sort of affection, a bond with this girl, who the teacher is this girl's favorite teacher, even though they've never really had any type of personal relationship because of the situation that they're in. That's kind of impossible. But they both definitely have a soft spot for one another. And we also follow one of the scientists who is leading the research of figuring out why these children are different, what exactly this virus does to humans, and if there's any way to cure it or treat it. This school is then attacked by the people who live outside, and this group of 5 leave, and they are trying to get back to the base of the government or the military that they typically would report to. We find out that we haven't heard from them in a while, so they're just kind of hoping that there's somebody there that can help them once they arrive. Meanwhile, they have to cover quite a bit of ground with a lot of danger around them between the hungries and just the scavenger people who live outside. I forget what they're called specifically. But there's a lot of potential danger for them. Also traveling with this girl who at some point could just turn on them if she loses herself to this instinctual thing that's inside of her now because of this virus. I thought this take on zombies was very interesting, what it's based off of. And for the most part, there's just a lot of talk about at what point do these people stop being people and start being hungries, and at what point did they stop being hungries like our main character is, where she still has a lot of her humanity even though this virus is inside of her, and what makes her different from the other children that live outside that have not been taught or taken care of and haven't been able to control their urges and maintain any type of irrational thoughts. So there's a lot of interesting things happening in this story, but I also didn't really connect with it as much as I thought that I was going to. I really didn't like one of the perspectives. One of the military guys just felt like he had a very crude perspective and thought process on things that I don't think added anything to what was happening, or the things he added I don't feel like really fit into the whole of everything. That's just my opinion, obviously, but I think having the difference in the women, particularly the very sciencey side and the more compassionate side, and then having this girl kind of in the middle of everything where she understands the risk that she poses to these adults, but also she has maintained enough of herself that she doesn't want to give into it, that she didn't even know that she was a hungry at the beginning of the story. She finds out after we meet her in the opening why things are run the way that they are. So I did like this. I am planning to read the sequel, The Boy on the Bridge. So that is everything that I read in November. I did pick up a couple of things. I'm currently reading a bunch of things right now that I'm just sort of cycling through as I feel like it, trying to get my reading pace back up, but I also still have a bunch of other things going on that I can't just drop everything and read all the books, as much as I would love to do that. Let me know what you read in November, if you had any standouts, or what you're planning to read in December, if you have anything you're really excited to get to. Otherwise, that's all for me today. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you next time. Bye.